quiet collapse of love. When a woman has already left opening. A woman never cheats suddenly. She disconnects long before she ever touches another man. Welcome to Soul of Life, the channel where we don't sugarcoat human behavior. We examine it, piece by piece, with reason, not resentment, with clarity, not chaos. If you're a man who senses something is wrong, but can't put it into words, this message is for you. Because here's a quiet truth no one tells you. Most betrayals don't start in hotel rooms. They start in living rooms. They begin in routine conversations that feel colder, in morning kisses that feel shorter, in smiles that no longer reach the eyes. She doesn't scream, doesn't fight. She just withdraws. And if you're not paying close attention, you'll mistake her detachment for mood swings, stress, or even your own fault. But you're not crazy. You're just watching love collapse, quietly, slowly, painfully. This is how it begins. Let's walk through it together. 1. The smile that doesn't touch her eyes. She doesn't slam the door. She doesn't pack her bags. She just starts disappearing, softly. At first, it's easy to dismiss. She still shows up, still asks if you've eaten, still puts her phone down at dinner. But something's missing. Not in what she says, but in what she no longer feels when she says it. Her good morning sounds like a reflex. Her laugh doesn't echo like it used to. Her smile, it's there, technically, but it floats on the surface, never reaching the eyes. And you feel it. You feel it when your jokes land flat, when her hugs feel like obligations, when her gaze lingers on the wall instead of your face. She tells you it's just stress. Work's been hard. She's tired. And you want to believe that, because it's easier than facing the alternative, that her heart is already elsewhere. But men who live with emotional intelligence, men who observe, know better. They don't chase ghosts, but they recognize patterns. And when love turns into politeness, when warmth is replaced with routine, that's not connection. That's caretaking. A woman who has emotionally left will stay just long enough to avoid questions. She'll ration presence like it's enough. But presence without intimacy isn't closeness. It's a performance for appearances. You become part of a play where the script keeps changing. And you're left improvising your lines, hoping she still claps at the end. But here's the truth. When a woman stops seeing you, really seeing you, you start to disappear. Not from her life, but from your own identity inside it. And no relationship is worth that kind of erasure. The man who sees this doesn't panic. He pays attention. He listens to the silence between words. Because where affection once lived, he now finds distance dressed as routine. And that's the first real sign. The smile that doesn't touch her eyes is the goodbye she hasn't said out loud yet. 2. The phone that becomes her new secret. It used to sit on the nightstand, face up, forgotten, unlocked. Now it's always face down, always silent, always angled away. You didn't change, but the phone did. She used to scroll openly, show you memes, read you messages out loud. Now she clutches it like a diary with a lock you were never given the key to. You never asked for her password, because real trust doesn't require surveillance. But suddenly, you find yourself watching, not her phone, but her behavior. How her fingers type faster when you walk into the room. How her notifications vanish before you can glance. How her voice goes down half an octave when she answers a call in the hallway. And when you ask, calmly, respectfully, "Is everything okay?" she flips the script. Suddenly, you are the problem. You're insecure. You're paranoid. You're reading too much into things. But listen closely. That is emotional manipulation wrapped in sweet packaging. A man who lives by clarity doesn't chase shadows. He watches patterns. And when access turns to secrecy, when comfort becomes guarded, He doesn't accuse, he assesses. Because privacy isn't the same as secrecy. Privacy is healthy. It respects boundaries. But secrecy builds walls and lies behind them. When a woman changes the rhythm of her openness, when she filters her life before sharing it with you, you're not seeing a new version of her. You're seeing the edited cut she wants you to believe. Real connection doesn't fear exposure. Real love doesn't angle its phone away during dinner. And when the phone becomes more of a companion than you've already been replaced, emotionally, if not yet physically. That's why the silence around the phone matters. Because in relationships, secrecy doesn't protect peace, it protects distance. And you deserve a love that doesn't require you to squint through smoke to find the truth. 3. Her body is present, but her soul is missing. The hardest kind of absence is the one that still lies next to you at night. She kisses you. She reaches for your hand. She might even initiate intimacy more often than before. But somehow, each touch feels colder than the last. You lie there afterward, not fulfilled, but confused. You wonder if it's you, if you're misreading things, if your standards for connection are too high. But deep down, you know, this isn't closeness. It's choreography. She's not offering affection. She's offering a cover story. And that's what most men don't realize. Physical intimacy without emotional presence is just performance. It's how she silences your instincts without addressing them. It's how she buys time, by giving you just enough to keep you from asking the harder questions. Some nights, she turns away without a word. Other nights, her passion feels excessive, rushed, forced, mechanical. Like she's overcompensating for guilt she's not ready to confess. And it leaves you stuck between two awful choices. The cold that feels like rejection, or the heat that feels like misdirection. But a wise man listens not just to what her body does, but to what her soul withholds. Because real intimacy is not about how often, it's about how honestly. And when your gut tells you something's off, it usually is. You'll notice it in the silence after, the way she rolls away too fast, the way she avoids eye contact, the way your body feels used, not embraced. And if you ignore that, if you pretend it's fine, you're not preserving the relationship. You're participating in its illusion. A woman who truly loves you doesn't ration connection. She doesn't use affection as damage control. She shows up with her heart, not just her hands. So if what you're getting feels rehearsed, ask yourself this. Do you want to keep playing a role in her script? Or start writing a new story where your presence is truly met, mind, body, and soul? 4. She finds reasons to fight over nothing suddenly. The smallest things become massive offenses. You didn't rinse a plate, and now she's giving you the silent treatment. You responded with one-word answers, and she calls you emotionally unavailable. You misheard a question, and she accuses you of not listening, not caring, not showing up. But none of it tracks, does it? Because none of it's real. These aren't reactions to your actions. They're projections of her internal guilt. When a woman begins to pull away emotionally, she needs a story, one where you're the villain. Because as long as you're the reason things feel distant, she doesn't have to examine her own choices. And that's when you notice the shift. The arguments aren't about solutions anymore. They're about setting a tone. One where you're always on edge, always apologizing, always trying to fix what you didn't break. She builds a wall of tension between you, brick by brick, using your every mistake as mortar. And behind that wall, she hides the truth. She's not fighting with you. She's trying to justify why she's letting go. It's not about socks. It's about rewriting the narrative so she can feel innocent as she exits. But the danger is this. If you buy into the illusion, you'll lose yourself trying to prove you're worthy of a woman who's already left. You'll start over-explaining, over-apologizing, overcompensating for a crime you never committed. And slowly, you'll abandon your self-respect just to keep peace in a war designed to make you feel like the enemy. But here's the truth every grounded man must remember. You don't win love by staying in a relationship that weaponizes your kindness. You don't earn connection by surviving manipulation. You win by stepping away from the chaos, by refusing to fight battles built on distortion, and by realizing when love becomes a courtroom, your peace is always the first casualty. 5. She edits you out of her future. She doesn't slam the door. She simply stops using your name when she talks about tomorrow. It starts small, barely noticeable. We should take a trip this fall becomes I need time to think. We'll redecorate the living room becomes I'm exploring a new vibe. Plans that once included both of you slowly dissolve into solo visions. But here's what makes it cruel. She doesn't break up with you. She rewrites the story so you were never part of the ending. Her goals change. Her tone shifts. She starts talking about healing and growth like you're the wound. And every time you bring up the future, she dodges it. Or worse, downplays it. As if dreaming together was a phase she outgrew. And when you question it, gently, hopefully, she flips it on you. You're overthinking. You're reading too much into it. But you're not. You're watching yourself fade from her vision one subtle sentence at a time. This is emotional distancing disguised as independence. It's not empowerment. It's erasure. She's practicing life without you so that when she finally walks away, she won't stumble. And when she does go, she'll tell herself, and maybe even you, this was a long time coming. But the man left behind doesn't see the countdown. He just hears the final buzzer. The truth? She didn't ask you to leave. She just made sure you stopped feeling like you belonged. And that's the genius of quiet detachment. There's no fight, no final conversation. Just a growing emptiness in places you used to fill. But a wise man knows, when you're no longer part of someone's future, you shouldn't keep investing in their present, because a love that erases you in silence is still a betrayal. Just delivered one quiet edit at a time. What should a stoic man do? When love slips through your fingers like smoke, you don't grab at it with panic. You inhale the truth and exhale what no longer serves you. You don't shout to be heard. You don't beg to be seen. You don't light yourself on fire just to keep her warm. You observe. You detach. You protect your peace. Not because you're cold, but because you've learned the discipline of emotional clarity. If she had to shatter loyalty to find herself, then she was never building a life with you. She was building an escape from one. And your job is not to convince her to stay. Your job is to stay centered when everything around you wants to knock you off balance. Because real love isn't a performance. It doesn't need to be decoded. It doesn't leave you questioning your worth at night. If her love feels like a puzzle, always missing a piece, you already have your answer. A stoic man doesn't chase clarity. He chooses it. He sees that the version of her he's holding on to no longer exists, if it ever did, and he doesn't mourn what left him in silence. He rebuilds, not to prove something, not to win her back, but because his identity was never tied to someone else's inconsistency. So if her eyes no longer light up at your presence, if her words feel like obligation, if her energy retreats every time you reach for her, you walk, not to punish, but to preserve what's left of your dignity, because walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And sometimes, the most powerful act of love is the love you give yourself when someone else stopped giving it long ago. Conclusion: cheating doesn't begin in a bedroom. It begins in a hallway of half-answered questions, in the sigh after a cold kiss, in the smile that looks more like a habit than a feeling. You knew, long before the evidence, long before the distance turned into silence. But like most men who love deeply, you gave the benefit of the doubt. You tried to fix what wasn't yours to fix. And that's where too many lose themselves. Not in heartbreak, but in self-betrayal. So here's the final truth. You don't chase someone who's rehearsed your absence. You don't shrink just to stay in a space where you're no longer seen. You don't bleed emotionally to keep someone comfortable in their escape. You rise, you rebuild, you reclaim your presence, and you walk forward, not bitter, not broken, but wiser. Because clarity is not cruelty. It's compassion for your future self. And if this message spoke to something deep inside you, if it named the ache you couldn't explain, you're not alone. Leave a comment below and write one word: clarity. That one word means you're done guessing, done doubting, done disappearing. And if you're ready to rebuild your peace and sharpen your vision, subscribe to Soul of Life. This channel isn't about blame. It's about strength. It's about seeing what's real and finally choosing yourself again.